When it comes to romantic occasions, people often have a tendency to want to go out to eat, and I get it, it's a nice sentiment. But on this Valentine's Day or on your next date night, I encourage you to stay in for two reasons. One, COVID. I mean, I know you've probably forgotten about it, right? But it's still having a significant impact on the restaurant industry and your experience therein. Limited menus, mask wearing, social distancing. I'm not against restaurants and I support supporting local businesses, but if I'm gonna drop a Benjamin or two on a meal, I want the full experience. The second reason though is a bit more enduring, and that is that you can make the same quality food at home that you would get at a restaurant for usually about half the price, or sometimes even less. I think that's a pretty romantic notion myself. So, this Valentine's Day, make Filet Oscar and twice baked potatoes. I know some people get a little freaked out about cooking expensive cuts of meat at home, but I promise you, if you follow the techniques and tips in this video, you'll have a meal that's not only worthy of a restaurant, but worthy of your sweetheart as well. To boot, it's fancy AF, and oh yeah, just about one of the best steak dishes you'll ever have. Let's make it. Alright, let us begin by talking about the meat for Filet Oscar, and as you might have guessed, it's filet mignon, beef tenderloin. I've got some prime cuts here. Certainly top choice would be fine as well, but I wanted to splurge and treat myself a little bit. Beef tenderloin is typically very lean, so having this extra fat marbled through there is a real treat. We gotta make sure we cook it properly though, which I will get to in just a second. Season it very generously with salt. Make sure to get that worked into all sides of the meat. We want this to be very well seasoned. Once that's done, we're going to get it onto a wire baking rack so that heat can circulate evenly around all sides of the meat, and cook it in a 250-degree oven until it reaches your desired doneness, which you can see here. I'm shooting for around 125 or a final temperature of 130. I'm sorry I can't show you what's below 150. It's inappropriate. That goes into the oven. Imagine not cleaning your cabinets before filming a YouTube video. Classy. Alright, so we've got two medium-sized russets that have been cleaned and scrubbed, and we're just going to now viciously stab them with a fork. Kill shot! But seriously, this actually helps air get in and out of the potatoes as they cook, so they cook more evenly and more quickly. We're going to coat those generously with olive oil. This is going to help them cook more quickly as well by allowing heat to transfer into the potato more efficiently, and we're going to season them. It's also going to give us a nice crispy crust on the exterior. I'm cooking them in an air fryer at 400 degrees for 45 minutes, but you can do them in a conventional oven at 400 degrees until they are tender to the touch, just soft. So these are perfect. I'm going to go ahead and take them out and let them rest for a little bit. They'll stay warm for a while. Next up, let's get to work on our Bernays sauce. To do that, we're going to finely mince one large shallot and get that down into a small or medium saucepan, along with 1/4 cup of white wine and 1/4 cup of white wine vinegar, or plain white vinegar, a few black peppercorns, and a good handful of tarragon. We're just going to simmer that over medium-low heat until almost all of the liquid has evaporated. We're not putting any salt in just yet because we don't know how much liquid we're going to have at the very end, but you can see it's about a tablespoon. So go ahead and pick out those peppercorns. They're not going to grind up too nicely. Take out the tarragon. We've extracted all of its flavor, and now what you're left with are these beautifully soft shallots. So save that along with all of the juices and set that aside. Next up, prep some asparagus. This is pretty simple. Just cut off the bottom 2 to 3 inches, put it on a sheet pan, drizzle with olive oil, and season it up with some salt and pepper. We'll cook this in a little bit after our steaks come out of the oven and rest briefly. All right, so our potatoes have cooled off just a little bit, enough to handle, and we are going to cut the tops off of them here. You don't want to take off too much of the top. You want it to still be able to have some nice structure and be able to stand up. So just skim off the very top little potato skin there. And reserve those. We are going to take the filling out of the potato skins as well. So once they're cool enough to handle, go ahead and carefully scoop out all of your potato from the inside and the skin or the top. And try not to damage those softened cooked potato walls. But if you do, I'm sure you're not going to be having to get a divorce afterwards or anything. Just chill. So go ahead and chop up some scallions. A couple of them will work just fine. Add them to your potatoes. Grate up about 4 ounces or half a cup of cheddar cheese, sharp or mild, up to you. Add that to your potatoes. And reserve a little bit of it, optionally if you want to, just to garnish the top of the potatoes when we put them in for their twice or second bake. Now to this bowl, I'm going to add a few generous dollops of sour cream. This is really to taste, depending on the texture and consistency you want. I would say I put in about 1/3 of a cup, but you could do 1/4 of a cup, as much as 1/2 a cup. And the final ingredient here, besides salt and pepper, which we'll add in a minute, is some crumbled cooked bacon. It's about 2 or 3 strips. Pro tip, cook your sweetheart breakfast in bed in the morning, and then you'll have bacon left over. Anyways, I forgot to add that salt and pepper, so let's do that now. A nice generous crack of pepper and a little sprinkle of salt. The cheese and the bacon have a lot of salt in them, so definitely taste it as you're mixing it to make sure it meets your approval. Once you've got it all thoroughly mixed and combined, carefully spoon it back into your potato skins, and you want to pack them pretty tightly. You've got all that extra potato from the top that you cut off, so there should be plenty of filling. Once you get the last of it on, just use hands, dampen them with a little bit of water to make them easier to work with, and sort of form up the top of those potatoes so that they are aesthetically pleasing. To make them further aesthetically pleasing, we will sprinkle on a little paprika, return them to the air fryer, and cook for 5 to 6 minutes additional. Here's where you could add that cheese if you wanted to the top as well. All right, our meat has reached its final destination of 126.1 degrees, it looks like there. I know it looks pretty hideous, but I promise they're gonna look better in just a second. So we gotta finish our final little toppings here. This would be a great time to cook your asparagus in the oven and finish cooking those twice baked potatoes. I added 8 ounces of jumbo lump crab meat to a little bit of butter that I'm just warming through. It's already cooked, so just season it up with a little salt and set that aside. And the final accoutrement, the Bernays sauce. And this is the only part that can get a little tricky, so stay with me here. 2 egg yolks, no whites please, into a little bowl to use a immersion blender with. You could do this in a stand mixer as well. Add in your shallots and vinegar reduction. A couple teaspoons of fresh lemon juice. Some fresh cracked pepper and a pinch of salt. And now we're gonna drizzle in 3/4 of a cup of very warm but not boiling unsalted butter. Do it quickly with the blender on, and everything will combine into a beautiful, rich, and thick sauce. All right, let's cook these steaks and eat. 2 tablespoons of butter and 2 tablespoons of olive oil over medium-high to high heat in a saute pan. Add your steaks that have rested for a few minutes and saute for 1 minute to 90 seconds. You can season them up with a little pepper here as well, since we haven't done that yet. After 90 seconds, you will have a beautiful crust. We know that the interior of the meat is cooked perfectly because we already did that. So once you've got that crust on the first side, flip it, give it another 60 or 90 seconds to bathe in that luscious butter and oil mixture. And I think we're about ready to plate this up. First, there is our twice baked potato. Make sure to take any eyelashes off the plate. Those are not very enticing. Our steak goes down. A few spears of asparagus on top. A hefty dose, I mean, it's a Valentine's meal, right? A hefty dose of our jumbo lump crab meat, and now a very generous drizzle of that Bernays sauce. You could also add some fresh tarragon back into it if you wanted to, but I'm going to be garnishing this with chives, and 1 herb just seemed like enough. Clean up your plate, garnish it with chives, and grab your camera because you gotta flex on the gram when you make Filet Oscar and twice baked potatoes. So, what does this taste like? Well, I'm gonna eat it in just a second, but the Bernays sauce is tangy and ultimately rich from those eggs and the butter. The crab it's crab. The potato, cheesy, rich, amazing, but the star of this show is that perfectly cooked filet. Let's take a look. Oh yeah, no gray edges, perfectly cooked all the way through the center. I gotta try a little bite here with this Bernays and just make sure, you know, that it's good. So let's go in for a taste test. And yeah, it was pretty much amazing. The steak was cooked perfectly, seasoned perfectly, rich beefy flavor. It's a knife drop moment, and if you don't believe me, just listen. Oh my god, it's so good. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you make it. Let me know what you think.